If you're anything like me, you've been obsessed with the secret lives of Mormon wives, but there are real secrets that Mormon wives have. And these secrets are a lot deeper than TikTok drama. There are things that the church doesn't want you to know about or any of its members to really talk about. I'm Arabella, and today I'm going to be taking you through some of the real secrets of Mormon wives and those living Mormon lives. So grab yourself an energy drink or a soda, but definitely not coffee, and let's get started. The first thing I want to talk about today is the church having DLC. So you weren't always allowed to have caffeine in the Mormon Church, and some really devout Mormon families still don't allow the consumption of caffeine, but the Mormon Church does allow it. And a lot of people believe that's because some high-ranking members bought stock in Coca-Cola, and there's a lot of debate as to whether or not that's actually true. I believe it. That's definitely something a multi-billion-dollar company like the Mormon Church would do. I mean, the church isn't stupid. They successfully brainwash people every single day, and they know they're overworking these women and they absolutely just want a cup of coffee, so they're going to offer them energy drinks and dirty sodas instead. And even though personally I'm not Mormon, this was my graduating class. So it's safe to say I do know Mormons and Mormon culture in general. I mean, there was a church attached to my high school. And this being said, I love dirty soda. If you haven't tried it, you should go to Sonic right now and try it. Or if you are lucky enough to have one of the many Soda Rush, Sodalicious, Dutch Bros by you where you could go try this, I'm urging you, please do. It sounds gross, but it's good. And these kinds of things I think are really, really popular, obviously because people love caffeine. You know, as an American society and people in general love caffeine. And especially if you're a woman who has 6 kids, you really want a cup of coffee. I also think it's interesting that the exact doctrine that this is from isn't really explicit at all. It's kind of vague, and the interpretation of it is really up to the church themselves. But it's also called the health code, which I understand drinking caffeine probably isn't the healthiest, but neither is eating the mass amounts of candy that Mormons typically do. I mean, if you can't do drugs or drink alcohol, you have to find a vice somewhere. And another thing that they just downloaded into the church is new garments. The garments used to be extremely modest. I'll put a picture up here. And now they're a little less modest, so women can wear a little bit more revealing outfits. And on that, there's tons of loopholes as to when you have to wear the garments. I mean, the perfect Mormon is supposed to wear them 24/7 and never take them off. Even when you're changing them, you keep like one leg in and then put one leg, and you keep them on at all times, because it's not just about modesty, but they're believed to act as some sort of spiritual shield. Like if you don't have them, you're more likely to get in a car accident. You're more likely to get hurt. But there are loopholes, and a lot of women won't wear their garments when they're going to work out, for example, so it seems that they're always in athleisure, and they're always on their way to or coming back from a workout. Another secret, well, kind of secret, that the Mormon Church doesn't like to address is same-sex attraction, and that's what they call it in the church. In the church, they recognize that people can be gay. God has made some people gay. People have the capacity to be queer, and they refer to it as same-sex attraction. However, you are not supposed to act on it. That is a sin. And you are supposed to marry a person of the opposite sex, because there's God, who's a man, and then there's a female God, and she's always pregnant. And if it's not a man and the woman who are sealed in a temple, and then you can't go to a planet after you die, and then you won't have a bunch of God babies running around. Yeah, so in order to perpetuate godliness within the church, it must be a man and a woman sealed in the temple, or else they can't procreate. And as far as I'm aware, there's no doctrine on intersex or non-binary individuals. This is just not something that's brought up within the church. TLC made a whole show about it called My Husband's Not Gay, but I think truly at its core, it's really depressing. Marrying someone who you know can't ever fully love you in the way your partner should, really denying yourself of who you are, is incredibly depressing. And at the end of the day, these are adults that made that decision, and they are perpetuating the idea that that's okay and that you can be happy doing that, but I don't think you could ever really be happy doing that. Another thing that isn't often discussed outside of the Mormon Church is the difference in how they treat young men versus young women, and those are two separate classes that they have to take, young men's and young women's. And in it, you learn very different things. It's kind of like Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, which Mormons love Boy Scouts, by the way. But in the sense that Boy Scouts, you learn how to camp, you use flint and steel, you build toy cars, you do cool stuff. And then Girl Scouts, you learn how to sew and bake, which is cool, but also kind of expected of a woman, and you don't really learn those outdoor valuable life skills that you would in Boy Scouts, and vice versa. Young men are not taught how to cook, bake, sew, mend, any of these things, and they're never expected to have to learn because there will always be a woman who will do it for them, be it their mother or their wife who they will marry immediately after moving out of their mother's house. I remember specifically people telling me about a young women's class where they made food and then went and served it to the boys who were playing basketball. And they stopped their game and they ate the food. I don't know, I think that really is telling into the kind of cultural beliefs within the Mormons in general, regardless of whether or not they grew up to be practicing Mormons. This is instilled in them in such a young age. And I think we see a lot of this in Secret Lies of Mormon Wives, where their husbands will start to get upset with them and they just kind of cower and shut down and hide their face because they are taught that is how a woman should be. You should be quiet and obedient to your husband, regardless of the fact that all of these women on the show are the breadwinners and they are always pregnant. They're just doing the most for the family. And yet they are taught to be subservient to the man because he's the man and no other reason. Another thing that a Mormon missionary probably wouldn't tell you is the priesthood ban. From the mid-1800s to the 1978, Black members couldn't hold priesthood or enter the temple. 1978, that is incredibly recent for a church to just change its mind. There's still doctrine being taught within the church that states once you ascend to heaven or in the afterlife, your skin will become white because black skin is a curse from God. And obviously, that is insane rhetoric to still hold within your church. And now they publicly disavow these racist ideologies within the church. But obviously, it's still within a lot of the members. 1978, that is incredibly recent. The Mormon Church isn't really a church in my eyes. It's a business. They earn $7 billion a year from tithings alone. And tithings in the Mormon Church is 10% of your income for your entire life. It's estimated they have almost $300 billion right now. There's an entire Wikipedia page dedicated to the finances of the Mormon Church. It is likely that they did buy Coca-Cola stocks because what do you need $300 billion for? Is God going to be impressed with that? I don't understand the point of a church having all this money, especially because the ideology of the Mormon Church at its core has to do with the afterlife. Being a member of the Mormon Church is essentially a big country club that you pay to get into. You have friends, you have support, you have all these people who are like-minded like you, but you have to put on this face and you have to give 10% of your income for life. So why would a church that has $300 billion charge people to go on a mission? A lot of families go into debt or are very close to going into debt to send their children on missions because it's the right thing to do in their eyes. The church gives missionaries $100 a month to spend on everything, except I think dinner is provided for them. But everything else besides dinner you would need for 2 years. You get $100 a month. So, of course, many families will send their children money on their mission, and that just adds to the price of the mission that you paid to go on. A mission that you're trying to convert people to go to this church to then where that member will pay 10% of their income for life. The more and more you are entrenched in Mormonism after being, baptized in the church at a young age, the more and more you learn about it. And there are a lot of secret things that happen within the church that non-members like to ask members about. And they will tell you oh no, that's propaganda. There are no secret handshakes. We don't really do that. But they just haven't gotten to that stage of Mormonism yet. So far, pretty much all this quote unquote propaganda I have found to be true in some capacity. Yes, there are secret handshakes and that just feels incredibly cult-like. There's also, I'm going to call it secret scripture, which is scripture that is sanctioned by the church. They do acknowledge it, but they don't bring it up because it can be misinterpreted or it doesn't go along with the lifestyle that they're preaching. like I mentioned earlier, there is a female god. She's called Heavenly Mother, but you are explicitly not supposed to pray to her. And she is always depicted as being pregnant, and she's supposed to be a role model for Mormon women. The existence of these two gods is why you have to be straight, also. It's kind of confusing, and then you're like, okay, who is, because they procreated somehow, so who are their parents? Don't think about it too hard. Trust me, I've been on this rabbit hole many times. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It confuses me constantly. But there is a female Mormon god, and she is not talked about, and you are not supposed to pray to her ever. The Mormon spiritual family tree gets a little bit complicated, but just don't think about it or talk about it, and we promise it's right. There's also multiple drafts of the Book of Mormon, which I don't think a prophet could redraft. I don't think they could be like, wait, actually, God says something else. But there are. Joseph Smith said he saw God in 1820. But there are multiple versions of his story that exist. There's 116 pages of the first draft that just went missing. And then Joseph Smith said he was commanded not to translate them. So, this church was founded on some rocky beginnings. The Mormon Church also lies about the amount of members they have. So in order to no longer be counted as a member, you have to go take your name off the registry, and it's a process. And then it also means you won't be sealed in the afterlife. You're no longer recognized in the afterlife. So for a lot of people, it's kind of scary because what if it is real, So when missionaries tell you oh, there's this many members of the church, there's this many members in your area, don't believe them. They're not true. But the LDS Church continues to grow. So I guess the missionaries are working to a certain extent. The members will tell you about a strong community bond and a sense of purpose and lots of humanitarian work, which is true to a certain extent, but also I do believe at its core it's for profit and for gain. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Arabella. Make sure you subscribe, follow me on my other socials, and yeah, I could talk about Mormons and the Mormon Church all day long, so thank you for listening to me yap about it for a little bit, and let me know what you guys want to see next.